Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Ramesh Kumar. This program is brought to you by the Healthcare Administrators Association, HCAA. For over 40 years, HCAA has supported third-party administrators and the self-insured employer industry through educational opportunities from leading industry experts. For information on joining HCAA, please visit our website at hcaa.org. How do you really motivate a broker to work with a third-party administrator? In this episode of Voices of Self-Funding, host Ramesh Kumar sits down with Trey Hinson, founder of Goliath Sales Strategies and seasoned marketing and sales leader with over 24 years in the healthcare benefit space. Trey unpacks what authentic, research-driven sales and marketing look like in today's self-funded ecosystem. You'll learn why modern brokers are demanding measurable outcomes, value-aligned proof, and disciplined ICP strategy, and how carriers and TPAs can better meet those expectations. The shift from feature-centric pitching to case study-backed storytelling, the importance of reps enablement for building a sales system that scales sustainably. This is a must-listen conversation for anyone looking to strengthen broker relationships, improve retention, and build sales systems that last. Tune in now.
Thank you so much for coming over here to our office. I am super jazzed up for our session today, and the knowledge that you've gained over the years and the work that you've done in the TPA space and the self-funded space. Before we dive into how our listeners can take a couple of nuggets on how to market, how to sell in the self-funded space, how to attract the brokers, the right brokers, I want the audience to understand from your journey, maybe a moment or two where you learned something that gives you this credibility, which I know you have a lot of. What did you learn that helps you really help these TPAs and brokers sell and market to these self-funded employers?
Yeah, so Ramesh, thanks for having me. I'm glad we got to sit down side by side with one another and record the session. But I think the main thing that I've been able to do, and probably the thing that has stuck out the most, is I've got to sit at the table with some of the most amazing human beings over the last 24 years and just learn what their mindset is, how they work, why they work the way that they do, what their goals are. Not the goals that they publicly put on paper, but the real goals of life that they have. And I think when you get that level of insight with people, you really quickly can figure out how can you assist them in the best way possible, which is always what my goal is to do.
And you've had an extensive career at Casio prior to this, and now Goliath Strategies. You've been helping hundreds and hundreds of TPAs and point solutions. I'm sure you've learned a thing or two. I wanted to start with, as you just talked about, getting to know people and what's driving them. What is the kind of mindset shift that you think about that people need to make when they're thinking about selling, marketing, and getting these ideal customers?
Yeah. I think the first thing that always sticks out to me as I'm talking with people is a question that I fundamentally use in every facet of my life. Why should I care? And that statement, when it first comes across, sounds very callous, but in all reality, and those that know me obviously know that's not my personality, but what it makes you and forces you to do is get to the root cause of what the buyer needs as opposed to what you're selling. So we all get into this. It's very easy and it's very comfortable to gravitate towards what the features and functions of our services or our business is. And I think where it becomes a little uncomfortable is trying to project and trying to guess what someone else's needs are. So I've never been the guy that's afraid to ask, hey, what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to take your business and do this, or are you trying to take your business and do that? Who are the populations you're trying to help? And when you start getting into what their motivations are, it allows you to motivate individuals in a different means, which actually help you along the selling journey. And I think as you take marketing, for example, and you combine that with sales, then you're starting to talk to not only what their motivations are and drivers, but what goals they have that you can assist them with. And that really is where the magic happens. I am by far probably not the highest IQ individual in the room in most rooms I walk into, because I walk into some brilliant rooms. But I often am the guy that probably is asked more questions than anybody else in the room.
And your way of building that trust, which I know we talked over breakfast today. How do you build that trust with your ideal customers?
It's just genuine. I look at the entire ecosystem before I meet with someone. Sales folks are traditionally very poor at documentation and research. They walk into a meeting, they're charismatic, everybody likes them, so they think that they can halfway it through that. But when I walk into a meeting, 9 times out of 10, I have looked at what that company does, what the drivers behind the person that I'm meeting with is, and also what the competition in that marketplace looks like. So I'll make sure I understand the landscape so that when I do have those meetings, there is a nugget of information or value, no matter if we work together or not. That's the least of my concern. What matters to me is, did I establish a relationship with the person sitting across the table from me? And that's what it really always comes down to.
So establishing that relationship is key. There's a lot of people using content, people using different ways of videos and this and that. Maybe talk a little bit about what is your approach? What do you advise people when they are thinking about creating content to connect with their audience, their prospects?
Yeah, it can't be fake. There's a million companies that are out there that sell you a playbook, and they're like, here's what I would recommend. If you don't know the person that you're talking to about creating content for them, you're doing a disservice just handing them a playbook. It's really easy to say, hey, you're going to make 5 posts a week. You're going to make 3 of them personal, 1 of them aspirational, and 1 of them about your business. That will only go so far. Yeah, you'll gain a little bit of short-term leadership and short-term viewership, but you're not going to gain the long-term sustainability. So the way that I look at it is, if you're a really personal individual, I may tell you to post 4 posts about your own personal style. I may recommend that you post 1 if you're a person that only is about business. If I'm in the private equity side, I am probably leaning more into the business and the results. If I am a TPA that is very technological, I'm going to lean purely into how my AI technology reduces the cost of goods sold, which means therefore lower premiums for those individuals. So I'm going to always tie it back to what their motivations are. And I think when you do that, you open the door for a point of connection that candidly you wouldn't have by just having a playbook of postings.
You talked a little bit about that research and understanding the motivations of your customer, the competition, and you talked a little bit about lean into your own strengths in the content. How could you take all of those 3, 4 different things and turn that into something meaningful in the content? Like, what is there like a next step level thinking?
I think there definitely is a next step, and I think that if I'm taking content and I'm developing a strategy, I am probably going to talk about key issues that I know the marketplace is yearning for. Or I am probably going to talk about a manner in which people look at a particular subject. GLP-1s right now are the hot button subject. Everybody's talking about them, right? Personally, I may talk about the experiences that I've seen and the programs that I've done with GLP-1s and why that matters to the audiences. Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about the approach from the stop-loss side. I'm going to talk about the approach from the TPA side. But I'm also going to talk about it from the approach of the broker who physically is the one selling the goods. So I think if you look at it, when you can understand who your ideal customer profile is and understand who the motivators and inputs are behind that, you will never have a problem connecting with people.
Yeah.
But I will say that is a level of preciseness that many people don't want to go through the effort to. It's not easy to build ICPs. A lot of people just look at them and they say, oh, well, that looks really, really easy. Now, there's 10 hours, 20 hours of thought behind truly what the motivators are and who the key highlights are and what drives them. I mean, there's a reason why strategic planning traditionally takes months, not a day. In our industry, we often want to input a day into it and segment that off as a time. And I think that's where the dedication and the experiences of Blue Cross, probably in my past life, I was a 21-year-old manager intern. I'm one of these weird people here in this industry that my undergrad was physically insurance and risk management. There's not a lot of us. I've met about 4 or 5 of us.
Studying this.
Yeah. So at 18 years old, I literally got into insurance and risk management. Why, I have no idea.
No.
But there is a path that you learn when you work for a national organization or a large state employer like a Blue Cross, that you do understand an attention to detail and a leverage of analytics and just a standard operating procedure. I think that some of the time in our smaller companies and our startup companies, I don't know if we necessarily go through all of those activities. And I think that some of that is because we have other things that we need to be focused on. And I think some of that is because we don't necessarily take all the time and the discipline to do that.
I guess what you're really then advising people is you may not have the time to do it that systematically, but still ask the question.
Yes, sir.
Go deeper, competition, to what the motivations are. Who is your ideal customer? Who is your tribe that you're selling to? So let's say if it's a broker, let's talk a little bit about the broker's business and how has that changed? How should we be thinking about building that community?
So the broker evolution, again, 2001, and I know some of the listeners and some of the viewers definitely were probably doing this well before that. But the brokers, when I first started working with them, they were really motivated by the overrides and the commissions. And that was the name of the game, right? So they had set products that they felt very comfortable with, they knew would work, and they would build that block and build that revenue. And it was a very, very successful venture. And the interesting part was the clients actually would stay with those brokers 15, 20 years. No problem. They talked 2 times a year, 3 times a year. They saw each other at the golf course or they saw each other at the social events. But they would maintain that relationship for that entire time. No worry about DOR changes. Today, that world has completely shifted. We have more aggressive brokers. We have brokers that are hungry and out there and are constantly beating down the door to gain business. So the broker that used to maintain that relationship for 15 to 20 years may now be maintaining that relationship for 2 years. And it's a prove what you've done for me type mentality. So as we step into that as product offerers and TPAs in the marketplace, we have to think of the motivations that are driving them.
And so as you think about this shift that we have to make to engage with brokers or ultimately employers, how do we think about selling the value proposition? What to focus on? I think you've talked a lot about in the industry. We as TPAs talk about features, point solutions.
We're all guilty of that.
And how do we shift from that, and what should we be focusing on then? And how should we be thinking about getting the right tribe of brokers?
I think you've got to be willing to come outside your comfort zone. And I think you have to be willing to let your numbers speak for themselves. So I want to see a lot more case studies. I want to see a lot more savings examples. And I would challenge most organizations to not allow them to be the mouthpiece for that, but allow the clients to be the mouthpiece for that. So if you've got clients and you do like a client appreciation event or something to that effect, why not have a camera crew on site to meet and talk with those different individuals. Hey, what makes XYZ company special? What have we done for you this year that blew your socks off? How did we help you? Because the minute that you provide a sense of how did we help you, you then create a sense of, wow, maybe they could help me too. And that is the most powerful vehicle and mechanism in sales and in retention as we look at it. So you have to differentiate yourself as a TPA to those kind of services and capabilities. And that's why when I make the comment about the features and functions, and we've all been guilty of that, but there is such a deeper level of strategic sales and marketing thinking in the marketplace that you should be doing if you're not already doing it.
Let's hear from the sponsor and take a quick break. You've been listening to incredible insights on the future of self-funding. But for you, the growth-oriented executive at a third-party administrator, a critical question remains. How do you turn these industry insights into market differentiation and real profitable growth? In a crowded market, winning new business against the big buka carriers is tough. You're constantly struggling with low member engagement and an overwhelming volume of tactical support calls. ZakiPoint Health is your digital co-pilot for care navigation and growth. We provide a multi-touch mobile member experience that drives 3 times higher engagement rates and cuts your administrative burden. But we know you need more. That's why we built the Zara AI suite to tackle your largest service challenge: routine provider and member inquiries. Using our voice, our portals, and AI bot technology, the Zara AI suite cuts your provider call volume for routine benefits eligibility calls by up to 50%. This is a massive leap in efficiency and cost savings that directly impacts your bottom line. And the beauty of our platform is that it is integrated with your claims system to drive data-driven direction for members, providers, customer support reps, and employers. No more silos and questions about the integrity of your data. TPAs partnering with ZakiPoint Health are experiencing over 20% year-over-year growth. We equip you with the differentiated tools to win new business, satisfy employers with clear ROI, and scale your operations. Stop struggling. Start competing and winning. Visit ZakiPointHealth.com today and request a demo to dominate the middle market. Let's get back into the show.
So this economic proof, case studies, stories in the voice of the customer, record them in video form. This is great. And I presume that can also then enable the broker. This almost becomes your broker enablement kit.
100%. Yeah, you're giving them the tools to then go tell their client. You're giving them the tools to empower them to retain their business.
Yeah.
The minute that you become the most valuable person to that broker is the minute that that broker is always going to pull you out of the bag first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is a powerful mechanism. A broker can sell, at least the school of thought that I grew up in, was that if 10% rate change or less, most people will be willing to stay the same to avoid the effort of changing their insurance plan.
Say that one more time, just so I understand, our listeners can understand.
Yeah, so at 10%, so if I give you a rate increase of 10%, at that point you begin shopping. If it is less than 10%, there's a high probability that I'm going to retain that book of business.
Got it.
Because the pain of changing TPA and changing vendor stack and informing my employees and all of those kind of things isn't worth it. I stay where I am.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that number probably has come down just a little bit because of economic times and the way that we look at insurance. It's still probably 8%. And that's the point in which people start shopping. Now, they're going to complain at 2%, but they're going to really do an activity at like 8%. And I think that that's how you have to look at this space time and time again.
Kind of get back to those ROI stories and
Yeah, and that shows me, Ramesh, and I think that this is where the power is. It shows me that there's value in the programs that I'm paying $4 and $5 a month for PEPM. It shows me that there's value in the ability to do this input program or that input program. You can have a higher admin if you're providing a value for a long-term solution.
Yeah.
But the key is to have the right brokers in your team that is selling the product. Because if you've got the wrong brokers, all they're going to do all day long is spreadsheet you. We all know that.
Yeah.
Everybody listening. Where the difference comes is when I have the right brokers and they're willing to look at that 3-year cost curve. That's where the power comes in on the product solutions and the bundle set.
So you touched on a number of things. But if I had to summarize into a playbook for sales, let's call it, what are some of the things that you would add to that playbook for selling?
I think number one, I mentioned case studies, and I do visual case studies as well as video case studies. I would have an in-depth product suite that I can tell you an ideal customer profile for every single one of those products. Often we just bundle products in and we sell products just because it probably is the right thing, because maybe they've got a couple diabetics or they're running really high on their pharmacy cost. What if you start looking at each of your vendor solutions as an ICP solver? I think that's where you really become a sales book mentality. I think from a sales technique, don't manage by analytics, but don't let the analytics be the only catalyst of success or failure. This game is still about putting points on the board. So if I have a salesperson that is sitting there that is unbelievably strong at connection with people, I am more than happy to say, look, how can I equip you to be very successful here and allow you to use your superpowers to do X, Y, and Z and sell 20% more? I'm not going to just force them into a box of, you've got to do all of this or you've got to do all of that. I'm going to allow them to do what's necessary to hit their numbers. I have seen organizations, and it's funny looking back at it, that they have run great salespeople out of the organization because they wanted them to put things in a CRM. Now, no, I love a CRM. I love the information that comes out of a CRM. But I probably could have hired an admin or a helper to put that information in the CRM and maintain that sales rep that was generating $10 to $20 million in revenue a year.
So that level of tactical and combining that with the various things. One thing that struck me as you're talking about sales and playbook, and I've seen you do this in the industry quite a lot, how you build relationships, how do you use advisory networks. Talk to me a little bit about where do you see the role of that?
When you build your network and people know that you're doing it for the right reasons, you really don't have to do a lot of marketing and sales. People will come to you. They will help you. Now, you have to be willing to be very honest and vulnerable in those discussions. But the whole way that I've built the network that I have, Ramesh, and I think the thing that I would encourage listeners to do is just be yourself and don't try to be somebody that you think is cool or somebody out there. Like, there is not but one Trey Hinson.
That's right.
The guy that wears pink checkered shirts, and that's just my persona. And the thing is, it's not a persona, it's just me.
Yeah. It's your authentic brand.
It's just as real as it gets.
Yeah.
But I think that as you look at this marketplace, there are some amazing personalities that you've seen emerge. But the ones that I've seen emerge and be the most successful are the individuals that really are being themselves. And I think that that's the thing, a personal brand that kind of comes into. And I think for your sales reps, to go back to building the relationship side, I think if you allow them to be their authentic self, I think you will see their productivity, their growth, their success go up much higher. Now, the one thing that you have to be sure not to sacrifice, I am not going to let a sales individual go do whatever they want to, or I'm not going to recommend this. Allow is the wrong word. I'm not going to recommend that a salesperson all creates their own decks and all creates their own materials. There is no way. The liability would be massive. Sales and compliance are normally enemies for a good reason. One keeps the other person set, and one keeps the person that works in the compliance area paid. So it all just kind of balances out, right? But I think if I'm looking at these human beings and looking at these individuals in an organization, I am going to give them a little bit more flexibility. I think for the younger folks in the organization, though, and I think that this is an important note, there's a lot of people who are just like, give me all the autonomy when I walk in the door. The people that have earned the autonomy and the people that have earned the ability to kind of beat to their own drum have done it because they've done the reps. The reason why I can develop marketing plans and strategies and sales strategies is honestly because I have done as many reps, if not more reps, than most people in the industry. I've worked with a lot of TPAs. I've worked with a lot of vendors in this space, some that have been wildly successful and some that haven't. But I learned from every one of those that were successful or that didn't. So I think that there's just something there that you have to understand that you've got to do the reps to be successful in this space.
And I think you talked about that early on, reps, understanding, doing the research, really understanding the motivation. All of that is part of this, being a professional.
Yeah, it's a professional, but you would be shocked at how many people don't do it.
Don't do it.
If you knew how many people I met at a conference that walk up and they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, wow.
You don't know. Well, I've been in the industry for a long time.
I've sat beside people that I've been working with and serve on advisory councils with and partners with, and I'll hear them walk into meetings and they're like, so tell me about your business. If tell me about your business is the first question that you were asking and you were a vendor in this space, that is an immediate sign of I did not do my homework.
Yeah. That's great. This is a fantastic conversation. There's tons of nuggets of ideas that you're dropping here, both for sales and marketing. If you were to zoom out, one piece of advice would you give to a sales professional or a marketing professional as they are chalking up and trying to take these nuggets and implementing them?
I think the first thing is create a system that allows you to hold yourself accountable. We all talk about atomic habits and all of these kind of things that are out there in the marketplace. I have checklists every single day that will say something like, did you impact somebody's life today in a positive way? And I'll check that off. I have a journal that I do every single day at the end of the day. And I call it stacking, but it's just stacking my ideas onto one thing or another. And my goal is to go through those type of efforts. But what that really allows me to do is look back at my day and figure out how I become more and more precise every single day. How can I deliver a better sales pitch every single day? How can I deliver a better product value every day? So don't get lost in the details. And while you may spend 4 hours pitching, spend 8 hours preparing. And that preparation is both on the front of the meeting and the back of the meeting. Every meeting I have, every podcast after this, I will literally do a lessons learned on what I should have done and what I should have changed. I'm constantly trying to hone how to get better. And that's not for me necessarily. That's for the next person I engage with because they deserve that.
So I have those systems. I love that you talked about the journal quite a bit as well in the past. Yeah. Have a way to reflect, have a way to constantly improve and go back to what are the 3-4 key things that you should be doing. So checklists and journaling, fantastic way. This has been super. How can people get in touch with you? You've got tremendous insights and knowledge. If they want to kind of work with you, what should they do? How do they get in touch?
I've got GoliathSalesStrategies.com. Very simple email address to figure out. And I think follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn. Most of the partners that I have, candidly, have never written me a dime. Some have. It's more about me being able to help them in their journey. And that really is the special part about this space. There are so many entrepreneurs that are changing the face of where we are. And I think as I look at that, I'm just honored to sit alongside them and help them. Again, that's GoliathSalesStrategies.com, and follow Trey Hinson on LinkedIn or connect with me. I'm always happy to help in any way possible, Ramesh.
Well, there you have it. If you want to learn more, get more juice out of Trey's thinking and experience, you can connect with him. But also, Trey, you're a genuine guy who is very generous with your time and your advice. And I really appreciate you coming all the way down to Boston doing this recording.
Came all the way up to Boston. And if you're going to do it, it's worth the effort of doing it right. So thank you for having me in Boston. It's a long way from Columbia, South Carolina.
Indeed.
But it was well worth the trip, and it's great to see you, sir.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Please join us again for another podcast in the series brought to you by HCAA's Voices of Self-Funding. Please like and share so we can build a community of like-minded people, and tell us about topics that we bring to you next. Please watch your email for updates on upcoming guests. I'm your host, Ramesh Kumar.